And so I could just feel this pressure within me, on my right side. And it was building up and building up and building up to the point where I was starting to feel like irritable. And I didn't kind of know what the heck was going on and why. And I have found in the past, when I have felt like that, this is usually when they've got something big to say. And but here I am trying to diligently do my own inner work and try and figure out, why I'm not so in balance with my vibes. And so I went in and did that channeling, and like immediately I could feel it was Mary Magdalene's energy, and she was the one really kind of bringing it in. It was really her speaking, even though she didn't want to use her name, because she knows that that label has got so much kind of assumptions around it. And she sort of brought up other people like queens, and other other females like Joan of Arc, who um yeah, I feel like she's got a lot to say. And after that intensive channeling, I honestly felt like we were all in big trouble. Like, someone's coming in and looking at us all being sort of interesting choices. And she's looking down at us or on us or wherever, she is. And she knows all our life contracts. She knows everything our soul has done. She knows how ridiculously capable we are. So, so capable. And yet we're still eating Play Doh. What did you feel about that channeling?
I actually, as silly as it is, I actually was taking a bath with my headphones on and listening to it, and it just felt very emotional when I was listening to it. I pretty much instantly got, well, I guess it was more towards the middle. I definitely had some very strong feelings, and I ended up having a lot of tears. And I don't know, it was just very interesting to me because, and this is just, obviously, I have my own inner work that I need to do. And so sometimes when I listen to things, it might affect me in a different way. But it also brings out things that maybe I need to recognize, which I think is good. But I, I just felt sad. It felt, I mean, part of it, the beginning of it, there was a lot of stuff that was like, oh, I can resonate with that when it was talking about gender roles and stuff like that. Because I guess looking over my own life, I guess I've always taken on, I don't know, like for me personally, I feel like I've always had a very a balance between masculine and feminine, but I've also been a single parent for the majority of their lives. And so I guess I fit into both roles fairly evenly.
That is so
Um,
interesting that you say that. So I talked about it because it felt like that's what she was trying to say, is that the family dynamics are so diverse now. You can have one parent being everything. And that is, yeah, it's got its own merits and challenges. Um, but yeah, they were definitely recognizing that when they were sort of saying um, that. Anyway, so I continue on. I find it fascinating.
yeah, no, it was just, there was a lot of different variables for me, I guess, in that video. I started thinking about some of that because I do, I guess, recognize that I sometimes, well, a good majority of the time, I don't know if I would call it like a people pleaser, but I've always been so focused on taking care of the children and trying to be there for, other family members that I never, I guess, it's just interesting because you've talked a lot about in other videos recently that I listened to about, you know, like finding your joy, which which, sounds kind of silly, I guess, but, you know, I've been thinking about that a lot because I don't really even know what my own joy is, uh, in the grand scheme of things, because I honestly can't remember. I feel like I'm pretty much an upbeat person most of the time, but I'm also fairly reclusive outside of my work. I kind of really just stick to myself and home. Um, but I was thinking about that. I'm like, gosh, I don't really know. I'm like the caretaker, it feels like most of the time. And
Mm,
I don't really know even what my joy would be. But anyways, it was just kind of a really interesting video. But towards the middle, towards the end, I got really emotional, and I almost felt it's easy when you're listening to those. I can feel, I guess, what was coming from Mary, and how they could perceive actions and behaviors that's taking place with humanity. And I felt all this sort of like heavy sadness and partial guilt. And I know we're not supposed to be feeling that kind of stuff, but I started questioning, like, oh, I know there's these times when I know I'm not the most I don't react in the most loving way sometimes. And I don't know, it was a pretty powerful expression, I guess, in that video. And it just kind of felt pretty heavy. But I don't know. I slept well, and I woke up feeling a bit more uplifted, and looking at the video a little bit different today, and recognizing, you know, the better things, and not just trying to take on some of the heavy emotion, or, you know, from the video. Does that
mm.
make sense?
Yeah, no, it feels like you're really honoring all of your emotions and senses about that. And I mean, yeah, it, it felt like, oh gosh, this is so much. So Mary did come in, and she still has so much more to say, because yeah, I mean, we've all, humanity has lost its sort of way, really, while we're having all these experiences, and doesn't matter what gender we are. And could it be said that for you personally, I know this is not about, like psychoanalyzing you today, my friend, but could it be said that part of your journey has given you the belief system that your joy is serving others by loving others, worrying about others, and being that everything mom role?
I would say that's a fair statement.
Yeah. And so when our children are, doing well and living, and as we are living through them, and their joy is our joy. When they have their problems and their, little social issues or events or whatever, sports, whatever, that when we're so connected to being of service to our children and our family members and friends and whoever we want to helicopter with our love, and it's so interesting when we sort of start thinking, is sometimes the love that I'm giving everyone depleting me, and actually is this all my role and purpose? Am I truly responsible for this level of love I'm giving everyone? And it is really bizarre when we feel like, loving everyone actually may not be of service to us and to everyone. And it's so confusing, because it's kind of like, wait a minute, there is inconsistency here. You're telling us to love all, and yet the level of my focus, dedication, worshipping of my children, and whatever, that's not right love. How could loving someone so much be wrong? And of course, there's no right and wrong, but it's about, are we preventing people from having experiences and lessons because we are doing too much for them? If we always stress our children, at some point we're going to have to stop.
That it's funny that when you're saying that. So actually, I very much, in all honesty, was that helicopter mom for most of my children's younger years. And then, I guess over the last year, well, really the last 2 years, but this last year especially, I really started to notice that it hasn't been helpful for them and it doesn't help them to grow. So I've been finally learning that, and so I've been doing much better about stepping back, and um, it's very interesting for me to see how things play out in my children's lives when I just kind of let go of the reins and let them kind of find their way. And so I'm thankful for that. I think I'm still working a little bit on. I think it was in that same video where I was telling you. It says, I guess for me, like I'm working on. Uh, I forget what the wording was. Basically, uh, recognizing the emotions of others, but not absorbing them.
Mm,
So I find that one, that's something probably that I'm still, you
mm.
know, trying to work better on. That's hard to do when your children are involved.
Absolutely, because there's from when we realize we're addicted to joy in terms of doing things for others, even if it's not even what they have been needing from us or requiring from us, when we are looking and recognizing at what our true responsibilities are, and when we sort of feel ourselves not doing as much as we once were, then there is this new emotion that feels like guilt. And that's uncomfortable, because when we feel like our love language is doing everything for our children, when we stop doing everything, it's almost like abandoning our children, exposing our children to challenges. And it can be very, very challenging to go through those emotions. Then when we sort of can shed that layer of guilt and realize, no, that they're very responsible, very capable of doing this themselves, because I'm right beside them. I'm not doing everything for them. I'm just with them on their journey. When we realize that that's okay, that we're allowed to love them unconditionally, but not do everything for them, including worrying for them, then as we are observing them, it's again because we're so connected deeply, so deeply. You can know how your children are thinking and feeling just by looking at them and observing them. And when we are so entwined within them, observing what's going on for them but not reacting can be very challenging, because we instantly go into as you know many people do, problem solving mode versus observing mode. And so lots of people want to help others when they're not being asked for help. And this is why we must keep asking the people that we're feeling challenged, stressed, struggling, anxiety, worried, concerned, all of those things. When we start feeling that, when we're around them, we may panic because, oh, what's wrong with me mode. But when we notice it's from the other person, this is a clue to give us an understanding of what's really going on. We know when we ask one of our friends, how are you doing today? And they're like, oh yeah, love and light. We, don't want to say, why are you bullshitting me, my friend? Because, that seems a bit rude. So when we explore it into, okay, so they're not ready to be honest with me. Maybe they can't even be honest with themselves. Maybe they're confused. So, saying you're lying may not be actually, an accurate label or statement. They're just struggling with the vibes. They haven't been able to express it to be able to even understand for themselves what's going on. So, sometimes we feel like when we ask our friends what's going on and they can't, mansplain in, a full novel, like a novel, what's going on for them and why, and they're not able to hold their emotions and be accountable for their reactions, they're really struggling. So this is why we are here to listen, and not try to feel into what's going on and then give them the solutions from the get-go. Because if they haven't done that verbal emotional journey for themselves, we could totally know exactly what's going on for them and then give them the answers, and they'll say, nah, I'm not in fear. like whatever, because they haven't recognized it themselves, because we've taken away that experience, that journey for them. And it's a fine dance. Oh,
No,
anyway.
I no, I like that you brought all that up. I actually it makes a lot of sense because it's easy for me to see with my own journey that roughly a year ago when I started to cliche, I guess, that awaken myself or start to grow and learn on things. It was at that same point in time where I realized the importance of, stepping back and letting my children find their own way, so to speak. But what that did for me was I felt like I had all this extra brain time, like, and so what that in turn did was it helped open me up and help me learn some things about myself and my own journey, which actually was not only beneficial for me, but I feel like me being able to have that time to focus on myself was also in turn has been beneficial for them as well.
Mm,
Um,
so true. And people get nervous having time on their hands, all the self-indulgence. And then when you're so busy serving others, to have to sort of stop and start serving yourself, it's almost like meeting a stranger.
that's
Like,
exactly what it feels like. Yeah.
what is she like again? It's coming up Christmas. What do you think I should get her? But isn't it interesting, because we would know exactly our favorite meals for our children and friends. We would know every, favorite, all sorts. And, well, we think we would, because we want to be so attentive to them. And then when it comes to, oh, well, being my own best friend sounds like something ridiculously cheesy. But this is what part of, because no one else can do it for us. We have to honor ourselves truly. And when everyone else is focusing on their own sort of journey, there does seem to be this interesting statement. I think lots of people get fused with the labels of, so many spiritual people are just focusing on service to self. All those service to self people are just utter wankers. And I just think, well, define what service to self is, because this is our life contract to be of service to all. But if we're avoiding and ignoring our own dramas, problems, insecurities in our work, how can we truly be of service to others? And so, you have to sort of have a service to self, a love of self, do the inner work, acknowledge it, flourish, empower yourself to then be in true balance, and notice when people are actually asking for your help and need your help versus, and what does that help look like? Because we've all I know I have disempowered people by trying to help them, fix them, support them, give them the answers and solutions, when this was a wonderful time to ask them questions for them to be able to get their journey out for themselves.
Yeah, I don't know why this just popped into my head when you were saying that, but I'm just kind of laughing at myself because the disempowerment part can even be with little tiny things. And so one of our areas, like, this is really silly to say, and I don't know why it popped in my head when you were saying that. So this is just an example, which has been great for me to finally let go of because it's empowering the children and giving them more self confidence. It's helpful for me and it's helping me learn to be more adaptable and stuff. And this is with little things. So we have a small home. And I'm just so used to doing everything. I walk in the door from work, I cook dinner, I do the dishes, I put the dishes away, I'm packing lunches. And so anytime I'm not very good at delegating responsibility all the time to my children, and so but then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have them load the dishwasher. They all can take part and have responsibility and all this is great and fine. Well then I come in the kitchen, and they're loading the dishwasher and like a couple years ago when this took place, I was like, oh no, that is not how the dishes go in the dishwasher. There's a method to this, we got to put the plates over here, and then it just caused so much frustration. And then pretty soon I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it because I want it done a certain way. And that was something I needed to get over. And anyway, so things have changed over the last year, and I'm like, if the dishes go in the dishwasher, I am ecstatic. I could care less how you put them in there. You could put the plates on the top and the cups in the bottom, and I'm not going to say a word. Like, kudos to you, and you're perfectly capable, to cook a meal and pick something out. I'll get the groceries and go for it. And so it's just been so refreshing, I think, for all of us, because being able to back away and you know
Mm.
and I know that's really goofy to say, but that's what came into my mind when you were talking.
But
The
that's
dishwasher.
but that's perfect. That is such a perfect example of, sometimes it is easier for us to do ourselves, and because there's a system, the towels get folded a certain way or whatever, whatever, whatever. And when we're so busy, we like to have our own level of order. And so, the cutlery goes in a certain place, and we like everything to be orderly and organized in some regards because it just makes sense for us, because we don't want to think about where is this object, where is that object. We just want it to be not in a distraction. We love those sorts of routines. And it is quite the journey to merge in with someone to create a new routine or accept someone else's routine, or process, when it's it's quite liberating to release that control and question, why is this irking me?
Yeah.
It always just feels like a game of Tetris to me when I'm doing the dishes. It's like, I didn't realize all those years I played Tetris, this was in training for the dishwasher. It was so old. When I was growing up, we used to have to put our hands in dishwashing soap and do it
Right.
manually. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
that's the
having to
same for me.
dry it. I think my brother and I had the biggest arguments when we were doing dishes. Like that was it was not fun times. We did not find our joy in the kitchen. Hmm.
um I just Is it okay if I bring something up from the channeling that you had with
Mhm.
Mary? I
So I
don't
just
know why
I just want to say quickly, so it was not her the entire time,
oh,
but it was
yeah.
her at the beginning, and then the Victorian Collective came in to
Oh,
kind of give us a reminder that we are very capable.
well, I think part of like the heaviness, I don't know, is towards the end there when it was pretty when the emotion was pretty strong. I think a lot of the sadness for me was at the end, because they were talking about, how a lot of people are lacking trust. And um, I don't know, I just like had this image, I guess, like of thinking about there's just so many people out there, including, like my own children, who they don't have an understanding at this point in time. And, I'm just starting to learn. Um,
What are you
but
saying
that's
that they don't have an understanding of?
just that we have, I don't know how to put it into your terms, like, because we're surrounded with support and love. I don't know who they are, who my collective, or whoever you want to call them, my guides, I guess, that I converse with, I guess. Um, but you and I have talked about that, and that's something that's fairly personal for me, but I shared that with you. But during that time for me, it there's so much love there. I don't know how, there's just some sort of a very strong feeling. And it's sort of sad to me to think that there's so many people who aren't aware that everybody has like their own team and their own guides or something,
Mm.
whoever they are. with us, because I know so many people feel so alone.
Mm. And what if they've decided to come here to have a life contract to just feel alone, to feel super separated from their collectives and source and soul family?
Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
Sometimes when we have worries, that is just from our sort of perspective and concerns, whereas maybe this is, they've already done so much amazing things in other lifetimes that this is it, this is the time where they can be completely lost in self, so self-indulgently beautiful, just being independently them. And I mean, not saying that it is, but I always like to try and find perspectives that may help make sense out of their choices. And this is why we see so many people comply and be so comfortable and happy, and they've got their routines and they sort of are quite content. Those are the people we don't have to worry about. If they are having trust and faith in mainstream media and all of their influences, then that's giving them a high frequency vibration. It's those people that you feel are struggling to make sense out of something, and a knowing that is a calling for them to know thyself. Those are the people I think we really need to support. I mean, love and support to everybody, but there are some. What they were sort of saying is this, when they were talking about us being lighthouses, and if
Yes.
we don't shine our light on all, just to kind of do a quick scan, where are you? Are you doing back swimming and loving it, and backstroke and dolphin diving and just having a blast in that water, or are you completely screaming out at a soul level for help because you're so lost in the sea of disinformation, in the emotional waves that come dumping and flooding over us, in confusion and disconnection? And I mean, there's a huge difference, isn't it, between someone just playing and having fun while being lost versus those who are about to drown.
Yes.
When it's our children, even if they're having fun splashing, just like, when how many times did you check on your child who was sleeping soundly, super safe, but we panic that they've died or they're not breathing? Like, even when our children are laughing so hard that it sounds like they're screaming, we panic thinking something's wrong with them. It's so natural as parents to think and to protect our children from everything and anything, even if it's hysterical laughter and we're convinced they've just broken both their arms.
That's very true.
And that the child sleeps a little bit later in the morning, so you're convinced absolutely they've gone, like, and just having to brace ourselves. We're so high wired into keeping these little beings that are huge beings in these little meat suits alive, that we become very, 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 very concerned. And that's just in our nature, isn't it, to make sure that we are protecting them at all costs.
Yes.
Yes, it is interesting. They did seem to show me that there are many lighthouses who don't recognize sort of lighthouses, and they're still playing in the water and having a marvelous time, sometimes choking, and kind of getting a little bit too deep out of the water, and sometimes kind of just splashing around in the kiddie pool area. And they sort of showed me that there's so many huge big lighthouse beings here, to be super strong, super seen, and super bright with their light, and just constantly be scanning everyone in their lives. Is there anyone that needs my love? Is there anyone that needs my support? Because like we're kind of like a lighthouse, but also a lifesaver, in terms of are you just playing in that water, or are you actually drowning in that water? And life can give us some amazing curveballs where we, could even feel very overwhelmed with, the shift in density and energy. The more we do our inner work, it seems the more capable we are of holding bigger, brighter, stronger light, stronger energy. And, sometimes we get more than what we are kind of used to. And so we sort of bunny hop a bit um, in that until we get our sort of bearings again. It's like we have a big growth spurt and we don't quite know our range. So, we're a little bit awkward in those big growth stages.
Yeah, I suppose when you were talking about that, I was wondering. Granted, obviously, I'm still navigating on a lot of different things, but so like the people that you see, who need the most support that you can tell, um, I find it sometimes difficult to find balance to both be able to be supportive and shine your light to sort of show them some love and support if they're in a moment where they're very very negative and they I guess that again falls in line with where you need to learn to be observant and not absorbing, I suppose.
Mm. Well, it is, a fine line, and sometimes we have to have lots of practice to kind of know how to navigate through it because, usually these practice runs of trying to be of service to help people and to be, able to know exactly what's right. Usually it's when we're doing 50 other things. And we're having our bliss, our inner peace. We're very calm and neutral, and then someone's just come and dumped a whole lot of stress and anxiety and density, fear all over me. And you're feeling it, and it's so hard to kind of absorb it, release it, and then be able to think how best to serve them. Because for that moment in time where you feel it all, ugh, it's quite a lot, and we've got to kind of get our bearings, especially when we feel like we've got to urgently help them and take on all this sudden responsibility while also doing lots of other things. Definitely can take some practice and not to punish ourselves or feel terrible that we've potentially failed. Chances are, however we've responded is probably exactly what that person needed. And if we are being pushed in one way or another, I know you said before that you sort of felt like you weren't as emotionally and I can't remember the exact words you said. You sort of felt like you were responding and supporting them without the um emotional connection, or how would you describe that again? What was your concerns about that?
Uh, about what I just said now? I mean, I haven't quite figured out how to not absorb other people's emotions when I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
support them. But I have learned how to not dwell in it, basically.
Mm.
Um, so I think I'm starting to learn that where I can feel it, which feels very heavy sometimes, but then I'm able to release it. But
Mm.
I'm not, yeah.
So we can't not absorb it. I think that's part of our duty, is to absorb it, identify
Okay.
what it is, and then release it, is
Okay.
from my understanding. And I think this is what a lot of people sort of, no, I'm not going to deal with you, you're too dense, piss off, like you're a bummer to my joy. And it's frustrating, isn't it? And sometimes, like, people will message me, just vomit their problems and their issues, really intensively, and demand insight and perspective. And I just sort of think, wow, like, you know it's kind of like, they haven't even acknowledged me as a person. They're not even asking like what I'm doing. Like if I'm in the middle of a session or something, I can't quite, you know, deal with that as well as everything else I'm going through. And sometimes I feel very frustrated, like, well, what else can I do? Have you listened to the sessions? What are you applying? Like, it's kind of, it gets frustrating. And then I feel like, oh gosh, no, that's not the way you're supposed to deal with it. Tough love is not the best approach. It's supposed to be listening and letting them, it's it's challenging because we want to help them, but sometimes they don't want to help themselves. And so when they don't want to help themselves and they're just wanting the answers, that is not helping them either, because they have to actually do their inner work to find out, to take the time, what's really going on with them. What are they really expecting from others? What can they provide for themselves? And that whole range of everything. And again, when we don't give people the answers to their problems that they're seeking from us, and when we just give them more questions for them to think about, for them to really feel into their journey to express what's truly going on with them, they can be really resentful with that because they don't want to do their inner work. They just want the answers. And that is, that's one approach. So then not feel guilty from someone who's frustrated at me because they just want the solutions. They don't want to actually look at their behaviors, their reactions, their choices that has caused the problem in the first place. And so, tough love is still love, even though it's like triggering people. We don't appreciate being the triggerer. We don't appreciate being that tough love giver. And, it's the balance and the struggle can actually be really challenging. And we just have to take it as it comes. But I think it can be so freaking challenging that we avoid people.
I might be guilty of that.
Oh. And that's not really a reflection on them. It's really a reflection of, we just can't deal with you right now. Like, just someone was having a go at me today because Jesus was controlling, manipulative asshole who's ruined the world. And I just said, well, I think that's what people are talking about him. I think that maybe gossip about him. And then, oh, you love religion to control people too. You're part of the cabal, blah 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 blah. And it's like, okay, well, you're not listening to me. Why don't you go channel, and why don't you go and do a quantum session intensive free? And then they are saying, why can't you just answer me? You're a lover of religion and control, aren't you? And I just said, I just don't think you're listening to me right now. Why can't you channel the information, try and find out who Jesus truly is, in case you've accidentally got some information that's disinformation. Really look at where you're getting your information, your belief systems from. Is a good thing, because I've been there. I blamed Jesus for what Christianity was saying about him, and and how Christians that I was viewing in my childhood were behaving. So we've got to be a bit mature and realize that just because you're Jesus or Mary doesn't mean that always the truth is being told about you. And this person was very aggressive and angry, and I kept saying they were demanding so much answers from me, and I just realized they were not even listening to what I was trying to say to them. And I just said, you're just too hurt to hear me right now. Happy to talk to you, happy to help you, but you're not hearing what I'm actually saying to you. And so that just, and I keep saying, I'm so sorry that you are afraid or can't trust channeling yourself in a quantum session. Why can't you have a session? Why can't intensive free? Why can't you channel this information and ask about this yourself? Because you're so hurt, you're not able to even hear me. Can you not get higher perspective information from your own self? And I just sort of felt like I was looping. They were just too angry. And it was so hard because it was like, all I wanted them to know was, your hurt and pain is blocking you from hearing any other information. And I just literally just had to keep saying, I'm so sorry. I just don't know what to say at this point. I just wish you could channel and get this information to be able to see it from a different perspective.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Even, I mean, even just with my, that sounds like a very similar scenario to conversations I've had with my mother lately. And I finally just got to the point. There's just a lot of anger there, and it doesn't matter how I say things. Um, it it could still come from a very loving place, but if somebody's not ready to hear something, um, then it really doesn't make any difference. They're going to view that conversation or that topic, um,
Mm,
any way that they're going to. And so, you know, I just kind of, I'm not going to try to force my thoughts into that situation. I attempted and approached things from a way that I thought would benefit for her, but um, I have to be respectful of where she's at, and I'm not going to push, you know, things onto her that she doesn't want to recognize or discuss or
mm.
just be angry. So we'll just talk about the weather and grandkids and just, fake it till you make it.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's really hard because when you want to reach out to those people to share your own personal journey and experiences and thoughts, you just can't share with them because they're not open to really hearing and seeing where you're at. That's, I think, where people struggle the most because they can't share their perspectives on life or um the meaning of life. And that can be really isolating when it's just a few safe concepts, a few safe conversations, and that's kind of the token gesture level of that relationship. And it's painful when it's parents or family members.
It is. I mean, and it's difficult. I feel like there's a lot of people who feel stuck just because, it's difficult when, especially if you're raised in different environments with strong religion or varying things, and you're starting to question those things, and then you're second guessing yourself, and then you don't want to hear other people's opinions, and you're just kind of like shutting everyone out. And um, I guess I've sort of noticed that a little bit lately.
Mm. Yeah, people explore why, why are my parents so focused on this one religion? And for some people this is keeping them safe,
Yeah.
and focused in the life lessons and experiences they wanted. They had to keep focusing on this religion, and not able to and never to explore life more than those religious doctrines, to be able to keep themselves on purpose for whatever the soul needs. And that can be very challenging for people who grow up supporting those parents. Often children come into their parents' lives to teach them how to love themselves and others, and to focus on the significance and importance of being responsible for other beings. And this is, quite crucial for some collectives who haven't had the nurture of being potentially a human mother. It's challenging. Um, what I was going to say, other people who are aware to this information. So everyone thinks, oh, I wish I had heaps of friends I could talk about the shift with and all this stuff. And then I have seen people get really fed up that we're still here. And they get so angry and they're so judgmental and so personally hurt that people aren't keeping their vibrations high, that they will sabotage their own vibration in anger and judgment and bitterness, and then still be angry. And they messaged me and they're like, why haven't we fucking shifted yet? What the fuck is wrong? I've lost hope. I've lost faith. I used to believe in this, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, that your aggression is exactly why we it's a
Yeah.
classic example of that. And they just don't understand that we are supposed to be those big powerhouses and to be really strong in our faith and trust and go out and support others. And when you suggest, well, what are you doing to support your community? Oh, fuck them. They're stupid. They just weird. Like, they're so aggressive towards them. And oh no, they cut me out when I suddenly realized, some politicians weren't evil or blah 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 blah. And they're holding on to bitter resentfulness, and they are really being part of the problem. And yet, because they think the spiritual, because they know spiritual concepts and the shift and all this stuff, they will refuse to realize that their attitude, their behavior, their reactions are still being accountable, and we have to be responsible for how we feel and treat and think about others.
Yeah, I do that every day. No, I know we were talking about this, but I'm like, well, I find myself I'll saying something that's not from a loving place, like, muttering something under my breath, about someone at work or something. I'll be venting frustrations, and then it's so funny because then it's like 5 seconds later, I'm like, wait, was I just saying that? I'm like, oh, that's I could have said that differently. I really need to stop thinking negatively. And then I just cracked myself up because like 5 times a day, some comment will pop up and I'm like, I really got to work on that. And I don't say it to them. I
Mm.
just say it to myself, but still I'm like, gosh.
It's very hard when we feeling this way. It's very hard when we're feeling this way about, say, like a coworker who's really tries to get off their duties and responsibilities, right? And try to get others to do their work for them or whatever, 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 right? So, we see the slackers and we feel like when we call out people for their direct behavior and attitudes, we're the bad guys. We feel like we're judging them because we're observing they're not giving everything to their job. They're not truly wanting to learn, to grow, to apply the wisdom and information you've already shared with them. And you are setting an example and leading them and showing them how to really make this workable, and they're still not towing the line. And this is when we start finding ourselves getting less than loving, because we actually want to hold them accountable. But how do we hold people accountable for their nonsense when we're still thinking, well, we should be loving them and blah 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 blah? And again, it comes down to tough love. You have choices here. You either suck it up and you actually do your responsibility and job to the best of your capability, or let someone else who's going to enjoy doing that come into this position. If you're not enjoying your job, get out of it. Get out of it. You're not helping anyone, including yourself. And this is kind of really obvious when we do something that we don't like. Why should we be doing that? We're not being of service to the job. We're not doing the job the full potential it can be. We're bringing everyone else's energy down around us because we're so disgustingly bored and not enjoying it. It impacts us so much. And sometimes when people get fired from jobs, it's because they're not in their joy, and they're not with the people they're supposed to be with. And when people get pushed out of one job into a new job, in between that finding that new job, they feel like their whole life is over. And in retrospect, in hindsight, when people realize, oh, that was such a blessing to lose that job, because then I actually got this new opportunity that was more suiting for me. But people love routines, people don't want to change. And the what is next coming, when it hasn't arrived, feels very scary. It could be the best thing ever for you just around the corner, but because you're not willing to let go of what's good for you, what's in your life now, I could say the same, like I've heard this in relationships, people holding on to toxic relationships because, well, the next one could be a bigger jerk. What if the next one's an amazing soul companion who is waiting for you, but you are not wanting to trust that you deserve good things?
No, I really like how you said all that, because it's a good reminder. Um, it's easy to think that love in a definable way. I don't know how to say that. Love is many things and comes in many forms, and tough love is part of love. And I think a lot of times it's easy to forget that. And so, which then in turn, you can start, for myself anyway, I can start judging myself like, oh, I'm supposed to be reacting in a more loving way. But I like how you said that, because I mean, it's not like I'm a huge asshole over here. I'm very blunt when I need to be,
Mm-hmm.
in a work aspect. But you're right, I think I just forget about that tough love is love, and sometimes that's necessary to help them grow. And I really like how you said that. So
Mm. Well, sometimes it can be very confrontational, and we don't like confrontation because we feel like we will get rejected and hurt again. And so, if there is something we want to talk about to someone, potentially, you know, honor that journey and say, oh, look, I'm really struggling to find the right words here. I want to talk to you about something. And um, when we sort of address it as, this is a concern for me, I'm nervous about how this is going to be because I don't quite know the right words yet. And when we talk to someone about this, say for example how you were sort of sharing before, was it with your mother, you sort of said that there was some conflict there. If
yes.
you had to go to her with something that's really sensitive to you, um, and you're not too sure if she's going to be open to hearing it or not, it's the delivery of how we address it. Because if we sort of, when she's already feeling your angst about something, she's thinking it's already about her, so she's already got her guard up. When you actually go to them and say, I need your help with something, I'd love to hear your words and perspectives of this because I'm going through something, and I think if I share it with you or can manage to share it with you, maybe you might have some insight. So instantly you've got her on a, you are saying to her, I'm needing you to listen and give me some advice here, which of course then they're going to be listening with all ears. Maybe it's not the right advice that you want, but by giving her your expectations of, I need you to hear what I'm going through. I'm struggling with this. I need to get it out. And I just want you to be able to love me and respect my journey with my verbal diarrhea and venting I'm going to give you for the next 20 hours. It's about letting her know what your expectations are.
Yeah, no, and you're completely right. And I don't want, it's weird sharing personal information here, but I think that was a big part of, why there was, we weren't coming to, I guess, a civil ground on this particular conversation. I think I definitely can see what you're saying about the delivery. And sometimes that's something that takes a little bit of finesse and getting, you gotta try a few different ways to go about it with each
Mm,
individual person before you find what works best with
yeah.
each individual. But
Do you, so, and like the thing is that you're still trying to seek certain things from each individual. So for example, for your mum, what do you feel like you're lacking in that relationship in terms of emotions?
with my mom,
Mm-hmm.
oh, there's just, well, there's a lot of history there. Um, but we just have an inability to really communicate in general. Like I said, with her, she more wants to talk about surface
Mm-hmm.
situations,
So
not anything of any
emotionally,
depth.
what are you still seeking from her?
Oh, that's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I
Because
don't know. I guess we.
because sometimes we forget that while we don't have to agree on the same concepts and the way of life, blah 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 blah, what we're still trying to communicate with each other is an emotional connection. And so what are you still seeking and hoping and still feeling like you're missing in that emotion, in the right, all of the range of emotional connections with your mother? What do you still feel like you would like?
Just the ability for there to be a connection of love, really,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a disconnect with that, and we can talk, and it's very um, disconnected most of the time,
Mm-hmm. Do you
and so just
see?
to have a true connected, a
Sure.
real conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Do you see that she loves herself?
No.
And so when we know that people can't love themselves, to expect that they can love us, it's kind of like expecting a blind man to see for us. And they would love to see for themselves, but they can't even see for you. And so when we're on our journey of self-love, we really can't love others. We can't do anything more than we're actually giving and providing for ourselves as much as we think we are. And this is what people get tripped over. Oh, I love my children. I love my children. But then when we look at the level of their love and respect of self, that actually is a big disconnect. And then they realize that that disconnect also translates to their love that they give their children, and they don't see that their insecurities to feel abandoned and worried and abused and disrespected, and their version of love that they give themselves is a direct correlation to the love that they give to their children with all of those conditions as well. So um, when you know that your mother is still working on her journey to love herself, and you deserve to have love of your mother, that's for sure. I mean, you're an amazing person, you're a fantastic mother, you're a fantastic friend, you deserve that amazing love. And I'm so sorry, and I know how painful it is when you don't get the love of the mother. But now when you see what you have been needing from her, which is your birthright, you deserve this, but when you realize that she is physically incapable of doing that because she hasn't learned how to do it for herself, so she's projecting, she's still judging herself, so that's why you feel her love is judgment of you. She's still showing you where she's struggling to love herself, and you know how painful that is. So when you approach her
Yeah.
now with a conversation, do you feel that you're going to give her some words of empowering of her to love self, knowing that the more you support and inspire her to love herself, the more she's going to be capable of loving you? Not because you are making her do her inner work, but because the more we love ourselves, the more we can truly love others.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I didn't mean it to come from it's been a very long journey with her, and so I actually don't feel like I need anything from her. And I guess
Mm,
I felt that way for a while.
mm-hmm.
I would
Yeah.
like to give her something
Mm,
because I think her lack of self love has a lot to do with me. And even though I have expressed for years forgiveness and different things, um, there's a disconnect there. So it's like it doesn't matter how many times I try to reassure, it doesn't, it doesn't stick, I guess.
mm, yeah.
So I'm still learning on that, but
Mm. And sorry, it wasn't supposed to be like a big personal
yeah,
exposure of
sorry.
you.
Oh,
All I want to say is, and this is none of my business. And it was, I was trying to get out that whole converse, like that whole sense of that channeling, that was just done. But what I want to say to you is the danger of us being so disappointed with people not loving us, even though we can't really see, or sometimes we can see that they don't love themselves, they're not capable of it, because we have been so hurt by them. Then we find it really hard to truly love them, because we end up mirroring what they give us. And while I know that you do love your mother and all that sort of stuff, sometimes we sort of give up trying, because trying to connect in with them at that loving level feels empty and hollow. And so it's this is why I think relationships go stale in many ways, because when you keep trying to give your love, and it's not being returned, or it's been returned in a way that we're not seeing that is love, then we start not hold well we sort of withhold, because it's like it's too much effort. It's not meeting my needs, and the love that I'm giving you is returned with a lack of love. And so we sort of learn how to fall out of love with someone because we're not having our own needs met. With it's quite the entanglement. And
No, I think you said that very well. I I can completely understand that. I have seen the truth in that in my own life. So
mm,
it is difficult. Once you sort of, I think you can sort of put up a protection boundary within yourself in those situations, and
yeah,
then it's quite difficult to try to find that balance again, and to
mm,
fully give yourself to that person in, in love. I think it can minimize the type of love, that you have with the person when you're in that situation. And so it's
yeah.
difficult to navigate back to the pure form that maybe it was at one time. But
Absolutely. It's so hard. And like they sort of say, we should be not limiting our love to everyone. We should love everyone, not have any favorites, love everyone energetically, because they can feel us going, you burnt me 17 years ago, yeah, bitch. I'm not giving you jack shit today. Like it's hard. Like it's so hard to be the bigger person, and to just love without that resentment and that pain. And this is why we need to do our own inner healing, because when we can see where other people are at on their journey of not even being aware that they're so bitter and hurt from their own past, that they're kind of severing and sabotaging amazing pure relationships that they could have with their children and grandchildren, and with their friends and with themselves. But free will and choices can really challenge us, and we don't realize that we are creating the disconnect. And while we feel so hard done by sometimes because we're not surrounded in love, well, have we always been giving love? Because we really get what we get back what we give. And in some regards,
yeah,
and this is why it's so important to give love to self, to get love of self back.
yes, that's very important.
Another thing I wanted to say is when people do sessions and then they feel really vulnerable afterwards because they were not aware of the level of inner work that they'd exposed during the session. And so definitely not talking about you, but noticing when people either discover this work and this information or this channeling, um, and have one of these sessions, they don't, it's almost like they were not prepared for the depth and the inner closet to be pulled out and freely discussed. And I found when I'm having conversations with people at the beginning of the sessions and trying to gain their trust for them to understand, I actually am deeply respectful for their journey. I'm trying to understand really where they're at many different levels. And it's quite interesting, because when I'm asking them lots of questions, they assume I'm an idiot and I don't know the answers. And so this is part of my inner work journey at the moment, is having people who have had sessions who feel very vulnerable because they actually were convincing themselves that they actually didn't have very much inner work to do at all. And when they have channeled their subconscious, who has told them heaps of things that are distracting them, they actually have this real embarrassment of, oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is information I didn't want out to the world. And while it's not out to the world, it's just out to me, they feel very vulnerable and exposed, and they just were not expecting that level of honesty to come pouring out of their mouths. And when they feel vulnerable, they kind of either go into like fright and attack mode, or they actually sort of process the journey, the information, and do their inner work and kind of, heal themselves for their lack of perspectives, and then be able to empower themselves through it, because all the sessions are profoundly empowering, in my opinion, when you hear the information and apply it. It was just really interesting to see some people's behaviors when they were very convincing themselves to try to convince me that they are very advanced beings. And when the subconscious, kind of with love, kind of humbles their perspectives, approaches, and opinions, this makes them feel very uneasy. And then their way of empowering themselves to kind of save face is then trying to, oh, it's interesting. It's kind of like they try to help me with my perspectives. And it's like they don't actually understand, when they're new to this work and they're new to me, they don't sort of understand where I'm at. And so they feel so vulnerable and exposed. They have to kind of try to help me with understanding concepts that they have just discovered they didn't know themselves. And so they're trying to teach me and guide me, but it kind of comes from their ego of trying to help others versus actually, again, acknowledging to help yourselves. And this is a very interesting thing I have sort of seen in consistency, is when people have not big egos, but when they're so sort of taken back that they were missing some big key elements in their life, they sort of don't know how to handle that exposure of realizing that there was some amazing opportunities for them to grow. And yeah, it's just a really interesting time where I'm noticing lots of behaviors. And when we realize what is our responsibility and what isn't our responsibilities, when we're wanting to teach the world everything, can we realize we actually haven't got that many teachable tool belts that we thought and assumed we have. It can be really exposing when people realize, oh gosh, maybe the spiritual journey or maybe this way of life actually has new ways to see and perceive things. And it's just fascinating. um I don't like to trigger people, but I also don't like to be kind of, I don't know what the word is, disrespected, I guess, is a good word. I know,
Schmoozed.
yeah, I sort of don't know. I think yeah, and people love to help, but when people aren't being asked to, like when people come for sessions from me, they're wanting help, right? So I am feeling into every aspect of it to see what they need and what's going to help them the most. Then it's up to them to apply it. And when they feel so vulnerable because they've been exposed to stuff, then they sort of want to teach and school me on some stuff that they feel very confident in. But again, because they're new to me and they don't understand what my awareness and understandings and perspectives are, it kind of just, I don't know, it's like I have to remind them again, this is your journey. If I need help, I'm very capable of asking for my teams. I have many, private client, me being a client sessions to do a lot of my own inner work. And I guess we have to really focus on, is someone asking for my help, or is someone sharing to be able to express and find their own path and journey and experiences? And we just here to listen to them without having to give them the answers, because they should be able to give themselves the answers. And when people are constantly trying to fix and solve others, they can really use a lot of their energy, that's not necessarily required.
Yeah, I was just thinking this is very, very strange. I don't know how to say it. You know how you were just talking about how with, first doing a session and that vulnerability and stuff, and sometimes it can be perhaps uncomfortable, or things come to light, where people might think, oh, I don't have many issues, or personal growth to work on, and then things come to light that might surprise them. Do you find often where it's the other way around, sometimes, where not much comes out in the terms of areas of personal growth, but perhaps that individual feels like, well, I feel like I have a lot of personal growth to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, they do. Yeah, they come in with heaps of insecurities.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be a big lighthouse. Oh no, I'm nothing. I'm a match. I'm just a little match. I don't know how to even light myself, and I'm wet, and I've been playing in density too much, and I sometimes get triggered, and sometimes I judge people and think, God, you're just so silly sometimes. I have quite a few of those people that are terrified that they are being the problem, and they overthink it, they over worry, and then what happens? That lowers their frequency. And so it's and what you're sort of saying is you don't know whether you're a people pleaser or not, and we love all these sort of labels, and there is some people that keep telling me that they're people pleasers, but I'm not saying you would also don't think, oh, this is her just trying to like throw me under a bus here, because I'm not. I think you have been a people pleaser for a long time, and you're actually empowering yourself through that. Your addiction to people pleasing is actually going, praise bejesus or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, praise you, because it's all on you. You're doing this, you're the responsible one. There are some people that know the term people pleaser, and so that's why they keep telling me I'm a people pleaser, but yet there has been nothing in any other statements that would even remotely suggest people pleasing. And when I explore it in sessions, they're not a people pleaser, they're a people impresser. So all of their wisdom and knowledge that they feel very comfortable with, that they repeat on, there's no growth. They've been saying the same stagnant stuff for 50 years in their spiritual journey. And yet when they actually are accountable to actually, grow and learn, it's very vulnerable for them, because they have this assumption, well, I've done these courses, I read that book, blah, 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 blah. I've been doing this longer than you. I'm older than you, blah, 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 blah. Like all of this cute stuff of assumptions to kind of put me in their place and them in their superior place. That's all fine, but I'm not the one that they're channeling, and their subconscious will call them out on it, and it kind of embarrasses them. So a lot of people have assumptions, and that are kind of incorrect in some regards, and this is why we need to know ourselves and love ourselves, and really look at our reactions and responses and behaviors. And I do feel so sorry for those people who are amazing, just naturally being here and being kind-hearted. And they're not doing it for attention, fame, money. They're actually doing it because they're nice people. But, as nice people, empaths, they have had to protect themselves from feeling the world. Because what's the world going through right now? The last 2 years, the world has been forced into terror, forced into worrying about mass death, forced into, this invisible boogeyman virus that's going to get you real good. And, it's going to be, everyone's going to know about it. And if you even just get that virus, it's the stigma of it is. And I mean, the whole thing, empaths have been quite on edge, because to survive in this world, you have to protect yourself from feeling this world, which is ironically your skill set for this world, to feel what people are going through, to be able to help them, to help them be truthful to themselves about what they're actually feeling. And this is the hard thing. When we see someone lying to themselves and to us about how they're feeling, and this is what we said before, to actually hold them accountable, to somehow, without triggering them, get them to actually express, how are you doing? And then they will say, oh, I'm totally fine, but blah, 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 which suggests to us that they're not totally fine. So then we can correct them and say, it sounds like you actually are, add an emotion in here. We're trying to get people to be like maturely accountable for their emotions. This is an emotional planet. This is the whole experience, the whole gig of being here on earth, is to have the emotions, to feel into it and identify with it. And those angry people are hurt people, but they will only express their anger. We can't get through that anger to reach that inner child, to reach that other version of them who has been hurt the most. They're so angry, they will put a wall up. And when we want to help them to love and heal and just embrace that broken part of them and say, I see you, you're not alone, we're here with this together, let's work together. That was in the past. What have we learned from it? What have we explored from it? How have you protected yourself so you'll never be a victim to that again? You know, all of that stuff to empower them. But when they're just putting this big wall of fiery anger, we cannot reach them because they will burn us alive.
Yeah.
Which feels like your mother in some regards, potentially. Not bringing her back into the conversation, but just to.
No, that's fine. There's really not much of any topic that I'm not comfortable sharing with you. So,
And so it's ironic because those people who are afraid that they're not enough usually are the ones that are quite good. And those people that are not even questioning, am I doing enough, are the ones where the subconscious is wanting to say, ugh, they haven't even started their inner work or been responsible, blah, 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 blah. So, you know, it's really important for practitioners to explore all of that, to really figure out really where that person's at. And this can be quite alarming for those people who think that they're super, you know, have done all the inner work and super spiritual, and then the subconscious is like, oh, they're not ready to hear that, you know. Like the subconscious is like, nah, inner work first, eat your dinner first, and then you'll get the dessert.
yeah, later.
And it's all fine for the subconscious to say, you've got all the skill sets, this is why you're here on this earth, you've evacuated planets before, you know what to do, stop playing in the dramas, remember yourself, remember this is not the one and only lifetime you've ever had. You know, this is again where they've got this luxury of higher perspective, where they know who we are and how ridiculously capable we are, like beyond, without a doubt, capable. And yet we add in worry, add in concern. Oh, I'd be so embarrassed if I started speaking my truth. What if people got triggered?
Right.
Well, I was. Remember that? Like, literally out of that session, I messaged you and was like, oh my God, they were yelling at us. We're in so, I mean, this is going to trigger the shit out of everyone, you know. And I could feel their frustration so intensively. You know, they're saying to us, stop with our distractions. Seriously, now, everyone, you know, really, you know, we have, you know, if we're still holding on to, if we can't love everyone truly purely, if we can't just love everyone and just want to give them a hug and just be like, keep going, you know, I see you in density, but just keep going. You know, if we can't get to that, if we haven't got to that point where we can truly honestly have, you know, love for everyone, if we haven't got to that point, that's our inner work. We have to really stop you know, being afraid of those who have been unvaccinated or those who have been vaccinated. We really have to see everyone as equal. And this is, you know, it sounds really simple and yet, you know, can be quite the challenge.
Yeah, no, I was just laughing. So it sort of felt like the feeling I got, the intensity, it's almost like, you know, like what a parent would portray, if like a child, had done something that was, super frustrating, and like you're stern with them, but in a loving way.
Yeah, and that triggers those with the big egos who think that they're gifts to humanity, you know, but yet haven't actually done too much gifts for humanity, you know, like they don't want to really support humanity too much with higher perspectives or, you know, whatever. And so they they just have that comfortable entitledness. And we are all supposed to step up and do more loving for each other and forgive each other, and see if we can inspire people to love themselves and to heal from the pain, to see where we're lacking.
I think that that's the most valuable part that I've of information that I've gotten from you and during our session and stuff was I had the hardest time wrapping my head around, like, and I know you've talked about this before, so but it's daunting because you think, oh, like myself, I'm like, oh, it's just little old me over here, I don't have like all this wisdom. I'm still like trying to figure things out on my own here, like, so what is it, what do I do, what am I supposed to do that's going to be able to be helpful? Like I just for some reason was thinking it was going to be like, you know this big giant thing, and come to find out really that it's really just in everyday interactions with other people. And I just find that very amazing because I think I was overcomplicating, like, you know
How to be,
like,
yeah.
yeah, I was like setting all these high expectations, like, okay, I just need to figure it out. And I would keep asking, what is it, well,
Mm.
and I was just trying to wrap my head around it, like it was some big giant, difficult thing. But really, it's just what I'm finding is just day-to-day interactions and working on bettering my interactions with people. And how, just like you said, with that's a big one, I think, is your tone, just the way, I forget the word that you used, the way you say things, can have a completely different meaning or feeling to another person by the way you say it. I mean, so it could even just be the littlest things, but I think it's quite beautiful. But
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely, more than a hobby, and we always are making choices to empower someone or disempower someone. And we're always making choices to empower ourselves or not empower ourselves. And if we're not consciously making that decision, then that also is a decision, isn't it? And when they keep saying we are already high frequency vibrational, we've already got it, we already are it. When we start worrying about it, that's when we add complications, and we start overthinking it. And once we start thinking, then it does lower our frequency vibrations, because we're just not that evolved in a third dimensional mindset. um, we go into fear, we go into concern, we go into lack, we go into distractions, we go into all of those lower emotions, because that is how we kind of have been trained to be on high alert, versus having the faith and trust. We are good, we are kind, we are honest, we are responsible, we are important, we are loved, we are significant, like all of those things that we've kind of been trained. Oh, you love yourself, you wanker, you're just a like it's going against our way of feeling insecure. And when we don't have truly the lack of, when we do feel the lack and absence of high frequency love and energy, then that would naturally make us feel that we are lacking in something, and we internalize it as if we're not good enough, that we don't deserve true love. We can't get what we really know is true love on this planet, energy wise, because that is a higher dimensional frequency. So this is why we feel like we're not doing enough or being enough, because we're not in that massive jazz hands joy constantly. We're not in that high constantly. We're not in the emotional high we're not in the emotional high consciously continually, but we are energetically high frequency vibrations. And the more we do our inner work and heal and forgive and love and love and love and love and love, and then have some sips of water at the same time, that is consistently keeping us high vibe.
Got to be a multitasker. Drink your
Mm,
water too.
definitely. And it can be anticlimactic when people are like, I want to be, the best I can be, blah, 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 blah. Give me all my skill sets, give me my tools, give me all my clear sentient, blah, 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 blah. And the subconscious is like, oh, you had that forever. What do you mean? Like, you just don't believe in it. You don't trust it. You don't know how to
Yeah.
to see it or to sense it. You dismiss it because you've always had it. And so I find some people who say, I can't be hypnotized, I can't channel, blah, 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 blah. It's like because I've got assumptions. Oh no, that's me thinking, they say. I just thought that really advanced information. No, I wasn't channeling. I just spoke that really advanced information. And I'm like, if you just spoke that advanced information, wouldn't you think, because it sounded very profound, why
Well,
don't you apply it? You know?
and I have one thing to say on that really quick. And I apologize. I My youngest son's actually coming home here in a
Mhm.
few minutes and is likely going to walk in the door. But in regards to the people, I'll just be completely honest that I had some concern on that in the beginning regarding being able to be very relaxed, and that came from because being an off again on again smoker, as I've already shared with you. In the past, many years ago, probably like 10, 11 years ago, I hired a hypnotist. They did this to try to help me to quit smoking at that point in time. Um, and it was a completely different experience back then.
Mm,
And it was very difficult for me. However, um, I found that when we had our session, one, I've always felt very comfortable with you. You just have a way when you're talking, was very helpful. But I was in a different mindset now than I was, 11 years ago, and this was something that was really important for me and something that I really, wanted to do. And I was very surprised at the outcome because, you know. Uh, I am not typically one that easily relaxes,
mm,
but I was able to get into that place, and I don't know. I just wanted to say that because you know I get that some people probably might have had prior experiences in different areas like I did, um,
mm.
but yeah, I put myself into it this time because it was something important for me, and yeah. So I can
Yeah.
understand what you mean about, putting the effort in and believing it and
Facing your fears and kind
yeah.
of, and people say, I can't relax. And I say, well, it's a choice. It really is a choice. And there are some people that want to relax and surrender, and other people haven't faced that fear of losing control. They have to put the dishwasher and all the dishes in the exact same spot that makes them feel comfortable, you
That's right.
know and we've all been there, but we have to see, does this really serve us? Do we really care how the order is, or do we just want the job done?
Yes,
Mm.
the second part. Thank goodness I learned that. I just have
Freedom.
to make myself go and hide in the other room so I'm not watching as the dishes are going in the wrong spot.
Face your fears, support them,
That's
celebrate
right.
them. All right. Okay. Well, I'm going to wrap up now. So, thank you all. Do you have any final messages that you want to say to people listening?
um Gosh. So I don't know if you've noticed, like public speaking and stuff is definitely not my forte. Like I said, I'm pretty much kind of keep to myself. So this is outside my comfort zone, but I'm comfortable with you, so here I am. But I'm not very good sometimes at putting words together. I just, I about a year ago found myself noticing things and becoming more aware of things that are taking place and both inside me and outside of me. And I think just listening, trusting your instinct, because it was really my instinct, which I don't know if it's instinct or maybe if it's my guides, which I'm still working on getting to know. Somehow I ended up here, and I've noticed that I feel like I'm following the path. Um, I feel, I guess, sort of like I'm being guided, if I can say that, whether it be by my own instinct or by another. Um, but I find that it's important to go with, and I know people say this a lot, but what resonates with you, because, you know, about a year ago, I started following a bunch of different channels on YouTube and stuff, just trying to find, other people that were thinking the way I was and try to make more sense of what was going on for me and what I was feeling. And I found that I had to really pay attention to different channels because there was several that I was listening to on a regular basis, and then slowly I was like, okay, I need to pay attention here, because I noticed I'd listen to some and I'd get done listening, and then I'd like basically have heart palpitations because there was so much fear-based information being provided, and then I found myself second guessing things that normally would feel peaceful and loving to me, and then so I guess if I was said anything, it would just be mindful of really what kind of information you're listening to, because I've definitely noticed that there is a lot of things out there that can, you know, have the wrong agenda and lead people down the wrong path. And obviously, I don't know what anyone's path is. I don't even know exactly what mine is right now. I just know that I choose to listen to things that I feel resonate for me and that aren't leading me into questioning, and making me feel fearful of the things that I find joy in, if that makes any sense.
When you listen back to this, and I know you will feel so proud of your ability to freely speak with full truth and integrity. Your intuition and instinction is fantastic. Never forget that, my friend.
Thank you, Joe.